Welcome to ABA Day, the American Bar Association's largest annual lobbying day, where hundreds of attorneys gather in Washington, D.C. to meet with key members of Congress in person, while thousands more advocate from around the country online. My name is Tamara Nash. I'm a South Dakota young lawyer. I work in academia, and this year I have the great joy of serving as chair of the American Bar Association Young Lawyers Division.
My name is Danny Borrell. I'm a commercial litigator in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I'm proud to serve as the chair-elect of the ABA Young Lawyers Division.
Today, we're going to work with the ABA Governmental Affairs Office to ask Congress and President Biden's administration to act on true student debt relief.
This event follows the 2022 ABA Student Debt Week of Action, where 20,000 advocates promoted student debt relief. Quickly following this event, President Biden's administration announced a wide relief package, including up to $20,000 in individual forgiveness. This was unfortunately blocked by the United States Supreme Court. So the need for action falls once again on Congress and President Biden's administration.
During the course of our time together, we will hear from several experts on student debt.
We will also have the chance to advocate directly to our members of Congress and the White House using the ABA Congressional Messaging Portal.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to working alongside you in the halls of Congress. Welcome. We are thrilled to have some time here with you today to talk about student debt relief and advocacy. My name is Tamara Nash. I serve as chair of the American Bar Association Young Lawyers Division, and have the joy of moderating a short but impactful dialogue for you today. Joining me for this discussion today are two dynamic and very informed panelists to chat with us. So we have Nancy Connolly, who serves as the Managing Director of Policy at the Access Lex Institute. And we have Ann Petros, who is the ABA YLD Director of Student Debt and Financial Wellbeing. We don't have a lot of time today, so I'm going to keep their introduction short, and we are going to dive into the meat and potatoes of our discussion. So with that, Nancy, I'd like to turn to you first. If you could tell us, from your vantage point, what is the current lay of the land? What is the status of student debt relief of the effort today?
Sure. Thanks, Tamara, and thanks for having me. So I think, as we all know, higher education has gotten more and more expensive over the last several decades. Prices keep climbing, the amount that families and students have to borrow keeps increasing, and the aggregate student loan debt amount is now at $1.7 trillion, which is the highest that it's ever been. And so in response to this, President Biden, as far back as when he was campaigning for president in 2020, ran on the promise of canceling student debt. He recognized that this was a problem for a lot of people, and he wanted to do something about it. So in 2022, he proposed canceling $10,000 of student debt for borrowers making under a certain amount of money. And that could be increased to $20,000 of forgiveness if you had a Pell Grant. Now, the legal challenges to this plan started almost immediately. So it never got started. No one ever received any forgiveness, and it eventually found its way to the Supreme Court. And last year, the Supreme Court struck down the plan as unconstitutional. So that path was closed off to this administration. However, that doesn't mean that they didn't have other avenues. So the Biden administration is currently using the regulatory process to try to cancel debt for borrowers in certain circumstances. So it's not going to be as broad as his original plan, but that is because of the regulatory process and sort of the restrictions around that. So some of the categories under which the president wants to cancel debt is if you have a loan balance that's exceeded what you originally borrowed, if you have loans that first entered repayment 20 or 25 years ago, if you're eligible for forgiveness for under an existing repayment plan or program, but you haven't applied, or if you experience some sort of financial hardship. Now, just to be clear, these regulations are not final. They're still working through that process, but they hope to have them finalized by the end of this year. So we are obviously keeping a close eye on that. The president has also used the regulatory process to create a new income-driven repayment plan. And these are the plans that tie your monthly payments to your income. And this SAVE plan is the most generous IDR plan to date. And it is expected to lower monthly payments for most low and middle income borrowers. A little tongue-tied there. And so that is currently in effect. Borrowers can sign up for that. And as I said, most of them will have lower monthly payments. And then the administration over the last several years has also used their executive authority to make changes to existing programs such as PSLF and income-driven repayment. So you may recall the limited PSLF waiver that was in effect a few years ago. The Department of Education is undergoing a one-time account adjustment to those that are in IDR plans, and they've made some other regulatory changes to PSLF with the goal of making sure that more people get forgiveness that they have earned. And so to sort of sum this all up, even though the path to more broad cancellation was closed off by the courts, since the president took office, he has used these various actions to cancel over $140 billion in student loans for nearly 4 million borrowers. So this is, real money for real people, and it's having a tremendous impact.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for level setting for us as we jump into our dialogue today. Of course, the numbers that you point out, Nancy, show us just how big of an issue this is we're discussing, but I want to just draw a finer point to that and just ask each of you, can you tell us why is student debt relief an issue we should be talking about, we should be engaging in? And can I turn to you first for your thoughts here?
Absolutely. Thank you, Tam. And this is such an important issue for young lawyers because many have student loan debt from college or law school or both. And it adds up. The interest on those loans adds up really quickly. I know I personally didn't quite understand just how quickly interest compounds and accumulates, while you're in school. And then before you know it, you have to start paying on those loans. It can impact, not only your career trajectory, but also your personal life. So it's critical that we talk about this issue openly and often and try to find solutions to help young lawyers better manage their debt.
Thank you. Nancy, your thoughts on that question?
I agree completely with Anne. And I also think that it's not just on the back end in terms of how much borrowers have to repay, and what that means for them in their personal lives in terms of starting families, starting businesses. It's also about the front end. If you were looking at going to law school and you're seeing it's going to cost me X amount of dollars, or, there's nearly $2 trillion of student loan debt percolating out there in the country, that's really overwhelming. And that makes people feel like this is something that they can't access, particularly for low-income students and students of color who may not have the same financial support from their families, or may not have access to other financial outlets. And so I do think that for some borrowers, it can also be an access issue.
Absolutely. Thank you for highlighting that. One thing I am proud to point out or highlight is that the ABA-YLD and both the Access Lex Institute are really at the forefront of this dialogue and this conversation. And I want to give a moment for each of you to highlight that, if you would, for the audience. Can you take a moment to provide a snapshot? I'm sure we can't, spend all the time to highlight all of the good work that is being done here, but if you could give a snapshot of the prior work that your respective entities have done in this bucket, as well as the advocacy that you've done, and maybe the partnership between the ABA-YLD and the Access Lex Institute. And Nancy, if I could, I would turn to you first on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have partnered for a long time with ABA around public service loan forgiveness. Our two organizations have been working together for over a decade to make sure that borrowers who are eligible for PSLF get the forgiveness that they have earned. We have been sounding the alarm with the Department of Education and Congress about potential implementation issues and problems that we saw on the horizon even prior to when forgiveness began in 2017. So we were really trying to get in front of it. We have also over the years had to try to push back against cuts or even the elimination of the program. And so all of that has sort of turned into this PSLF coalition, of which ABA and AccessLex were two of the first original members. We have now grown to over 90 organizations that are out there, you know, knocking on doors on the Hill and meeting with the Department of Education and helping them understand why this program is so important and the ways that they can fix it.
Thank you. And your thoughts and perspective here.
Yes, well, our advocacy in the ABA YLD has been relentless, since the creation of this particular role, the Director of Student Loan Debt and Financial Wellbeing, and just more broadly throughout the ABA. I'll highlight a couple of examples. In the past, there were a number of resolutions that we were able to successfully adopt through the ABA's House of Delegates, meaning they became ABA policy that then we were able to advocate on Capitol Hill and work with law schools on. In 2021, at the annual meeting, a resolution was adopted that urges Congress to amend the bankruptcy code to permit student loans to be discharged in bankruptcy without providing undue hardship as required under the law. In September of 2021, the ABA hosted a Student Debt Week of Action, which included a variety of speakers discussing the importance of the issue of student loan debt. We had Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Senators Dick Durbin and Elizabeth Warren come and speak at that event. The week also saw powerful unified advocacy on student loan reform options and other policies to help young lawyers better manage their debt. And these efforts and the work of the YLD's Student Loan Debt and Financial Wellbeing team were recognized by the House of Delegates in a report during the 2022 mid-year meeting. Also, in 2023, at the annual meeting, there was another resolution that was adopted to urge Congress to enact legislation permitting and encouraging both federal and private student loan lenders to create more favorable terms for borrowers, and urging Congress to incentivize private student loan lenders to create more favorable terms and protections for borrowers like those available to federal student loan borrowers. Also, the partnership with AccessLex has been fantastic. In 2020 and 2021, we partnered to conduct detailed surveys on student loan debt issues and gather information from young lawyers, in order to better understand some of the pain points and to appropriately guide our advocacy efforts. So just a couple of key takeaways from the 2021 student loan debt survey include that of the respondents who borrowed, 80 to 90% said that their student loan debt has in some way disrupted their careers or personal lives or negatively impacted their financial well-being. Black borrowers reported higher student loan debt than any other racial or ethnic group and were more likely to report their current debt balance is higher now than at graduation. Also, most who borrowed reported their debt has caused them to delay or forego pursuing a lot of traditional life milestones like buying a home, getting married, or starting a family. So that just highlights the impact of student loan debt.
Absolutely, yes. And thank you both for highlighting the very important work that your respective entities have done and the awesome and amazing partnership that the two have. So that's a fantastic backdrop for us. That leads me to my final question and maybe the biggest question: where do we go from here? What next? What do you see as the next steps that we can take collectively, that our entities can take, we as individuals can take? Nancy, I'll turn to you. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. So while broad debt cancellation may not be in the cards anytime soon, what we at AccessLex have been focused on consistently over the years is making policy changes that might be smaller, but will still have an impact for borrowers, and collectively, like we saw with this administration's efforts, small changes can lead to sort of big and important outcomes for students and borrowers. So some of the things that we have been advocating for focus both on the front end of borrowing, but also the back end of repayment. So for example, allowing graduate students to use Pell Grants to finance their graduate education, which they're not allowed to do now. Bringing back subsidized loans for graduate students. So as Anne talked about, that interest accumulates while you're in school, but that wasn't always the case for graduate students. That benefit was taken away. So we would like to have that brought back to make those loans more affordable. We are also strong proponents of eliminating origination fees, which are these fees that the department tax onto your federal student loans, that, you never see the money, but you pay it back plus interest. So those we think really need to go away. Lowering interest rates on federal student loans. I mean, the new interest rates will be released in May. We think that they're, going to be higher than ever. So that's a concern. And then finally, much like the ABA, we would like to see it, we would like it to be easier to discharge your student loans in bankruptcy. We think that should definitely be a path for borrowers who need it.
Wonderful. Those are all fantastic. And you're our anchor, so bring us home. Where do we go from here?
Oh, I just want to say quickly that the interest on student loan debts gives me such heartburn. But I am really proud to announce that this year we're conducting a new student loan debt survey to refresh our data from 2021 and capture some more information about the impacts that the pandemic has had on student loan debt and young lawyers. The survey just concluded, and we'll be crunching the data and providing a detailed analysis in the coming months. We're hoping to have this available in the summer, so stay tuned for that. And also we'll have another resolution before the House of Delegates at the summer meeting of the ABA in August. And the resolution would urge ABA accredited law schools to promote transparency by uniformly sharing information regarding the true and full cost of attending law school, preparing for the bar exam, and beginning a legal career. Because as we've discussed today, all of those costs can really add up quickly.
Absolutely, they indeed can. Wonderful. Well, thank you both for being here, Nancy, and thank you for your expertise and your passion in your work in this space. It matters, it makes an impact, and thank you for sharing your perspective with our audience on this 2024 ABA Day. Thank you to our audience for joining us. We are so excited to share this perspective with you and encourage you to join us in the effort for student debt relief. We encourage you to check in with us and learn about our updated survey results this summer. And with that, we will kick it back over to Ken Goldsmith. Thank you.
Thank you, Tam, Ann, and Nancy. That was a wonderful program. I don't know if people appreciate, but these are three leading voices and thinkers in the higher education and student debt space. And we can know that because they're coming through the YLD's efforts. The Young Lawyers Division has always been a powerhouse in ABA advocacy around higher ed and student loan debt. So terrific to see them. And I know that they're good also because I get to work with them sometimes. I'm Ken Goldsmith, Senior Lobbyist in the ABA Governmental Affairs Office, and my portfolio includes higher education and student loans. Now, I'm usually wheeled out at this point in programming to issue a call to action about some scary bill or something that we should be supporting. And we're not quite there yet on higher education, but we're probably going to be soon. And so we thought, what a great opportunity to get everybody together, talk a little bit about some of the policy discussions going on the Hill, and get people a new call to action, and that is to find the link on our site to connect to the Grassroots Action Network. It's a wonderful resource with all kinds of information, our Washington Letter newsletter, but also social media analyses. And it's also the place that you will see the calls to action when it is time to step up. I'm going to talk about two particular bills, and I want to be clear at the outset, first of all, that we don't expect either one of these to pass this Congress. Barely anything will. However, each time these bills progress, they become the new starting point in the discussion. And one of the first ones to pay attention to then is a bill called the College Cost Reduction Act, H.R. 6951, by Congresswoman Virginia Foxx of North Carolina. She is chairwoman of the House Education and Workforce Committee. Now, her bill is a big bill. She had previously been chairwoman several years ago in a different Congress, and she had a very similar bill that proposed sunsetting PSLF. And so we all raced to see if she was doing that again, and no, she's not. In fact, her bill preserves PSLF as it is, And I'm going to put a little asterisk right there. We're going to come back to that in a little bit. But it's a big bill with some innovative thinking, curse and a blessing. Three really big ones around student loans themselves. One interesting one around loan repayment. And then a final item I want to add about another bill. So the first thing that they're going to do is address what they call unlimited borrowing through the Grad Plus program and unlimited forgiveness through PSLF. Now, in actuality, it's neither one of those things. It's not unlimited borrowing or forgiveness, but that's a really great message for them to have, and it makes it harder for us to respond. But that's what they're going for, and that's what you'll see in the proposals throughout the bills, really. So the first thing is getting rid of Grad Plus. That's the first part. That's a biggie. If you've gone to law school in the last 10 years, you know how significant that was for reaching the actual cost of education. There will be instead now within the loan programs, new caps set. And that's a red flag for anybody, because that means if you get up to the cap, any difference between that cap and the actual cost is going to be something you might have to go into the private sector for. It's not necessarily evil in the private sector. It's just not as well regulated or protected as federal student loans. Also, as you get further along in your education, maybe you're getting into your third year, you're carrying more and more debt to the point that you don't have a job yet and you have all of this debt. It could be up to a private sector algorithm to decide whether you get the money to finish law school. These are serious considerations. It's not just philosophically having a cap. But there's two types of caps we want to raise to your attention. The first has to do with an annual cap, and a particularly innovative way, to put it positively, on how to do that. And that would be, rather than the cost of education at that school, you would be able to borrow up to the national median for the course of study that you're pursuing. So for people going into law school, for example, under Grad Plus, you would get the cost of education. Under these new programs, you could only get the national median for the cost of a law school program. And it's not clear yet whether they would separate public schools versus private schools like we do, but that would obviously have a huge impact on how much people could borrow going into law school. Huge impact on first-generation lawyers and others. And so I think you get the point on that. But that's your maximum that you can borrow per year. Now, there's a second cap, the aggregate cap, the total amount you can borrow from the federal government. Now, this doesn't include undergraduate. Undergraduate has a new cap, but under the bill, of $50,000. In addition to that, graduate professional students, law students, would be able to borrow an aggregate total of $150,000. For some people, that's ample. For some people, it's really not. Obviously, again, it's something that's going to push you into the private sector to make up the difference depending on where you go. The House leaders are looking to influence the cost of higher education in indirect ways, and this is one of the ways they want to go about doing that. They would also like to see more privatization in student lending. So those are the three big caps. The fourth thing I wanted to mention might actually be kind of good news. It's a new repayment plan. The overall bill would actually condense the 8 different repayment options into, I believe, 3. Standard 10-year repayment, just like ever before, consolidation loan opportunity, and then a new repayment program, an income-driven plan to replace all of the others. It would look a lot like income contingent repayment, which is like the others, except it's less generous. It would require 20% of your take-home pay as your monthly payment, with a slightly less generous calculation of what we mean by take-home pay. So that itself doesn't sound exciting yet, but then here comes the fun part. And Anne touched on this in her remarks, and that was that the real monster in some of these things is the compounding interest on these loans. That's the thing that can make these loans 2 and almost 3 times as much as you originally borrowed, depending on how long you're taking to pay it off. So that's really the thing everyone's trying to get at. So this program would give you the 25 years tied to your income to repay, but at no time would you repay more, would you be on the hook for more than had you gone through 10-year standard repayment. That's enormous. That means you can take greater flexibility up front, and as you make more money towards the end, you could begin paying down the loan faster when you have more resources to do so. It's a really interesting idea. It applies to all borrowers, not just those in public service or the like. And so it would really be an interesting idea to see move forward into future years. So those are the 4 under her bill. And let's go back now to that asterisk. In releasing the bill, like I said, she was preserving PSLF, but she was also interested in getting rid of this unlimited forgiveness in PSLF. And so what they're looking to do, if the scuttle is to be believed, is that she announced that there will be another bill proposing reforms to PSLF. And the kind of the back channel conversations are that it may very well include a carve out to exclude lawyers and doctors. I don't think I need to explain to you how significant or serious that would be and what our position would be on that. We are the more expensive professions that need that degree for state licensure. We have a very good case for why the program exists. However, when you're talking about the enormous debt that people are accumulating for law school and medical school, it becomes a little harder to message. So your help is really going to be important on that last part. So those are the proposals to think about going forward. The best way to make sure that you're plugged in for when the alerts go out or other information about these is to really plug in with the Grassroots Action Network. YLD has been so terrific. We know you're going to be terrific going forward. We always appreciate your support, and thank you again.
Thank you to everyone who has joined us for this 2024 ABA Day, and for those who have taken action. We encourage you to check out our website and check out the ABA Day Toolkit.